After saying no to splitting the cost of a private fence, I found my beloved tree uprooted, my flower beds poisoned, and a sign planted reading, "Nature pays the price." I demanded, "Why would you destroy what I nurtured?" She replied, "Because you chose roots over respect." But when the arborist dug into the soil, he found metal tags with my family's names stamped into. My neighbor destroyed my tree, poisoned my garden, left a smug little sign in my yard that read, "Nature pays the price." All because I said no to splitting the cost of a private fence. Let me go back a bit and tell you exactly how this mess started, because at the time, I didn't think it would turn into all-out war. My name's Mark. I'm 43. I live in Beaverton, Oregon. I bought my house about 15 years ago when my wife Julia and I were still newly married. We raised our daughter here. We buried a little box under the sugar maple with metal tags, one for each of us, stamped with our names. A tradition she saw in a magazine once, some kind of family roots thing. It was corny, but it stuck. That tree became a symbol for our whole life. I planted it myself. Watered it every week. Every season it changed, it reminded me of Julia. She died from a sudden stroke 5 years ago. That tree's all I had left of her that felt alive. So when my new neighbor moved in 6 months ago, I had no clue she'd end up being the kind of person who would rip that piece of peace right out of my life. Her name is Diana. Late 40s maybe, freshly divorced or something, based on the conversations I overheard when she had friends over on her back deck. She moved into the house next to mine, which had been empty for almost a year after old Mr. Jennings passed away. The day she moved in, she barely said hello. Just pulled in with a moving van, had some contractor guys working on her porch within 48 hours, and next thing I knew, she had a landscaper digging trenches. A week later, she knocked on my door. "I'm putting up a fence between our properties," she said, holding out a piece of paper. "The contractor says it'll be $7,600. We'll split it?" I blinked at her. "Why do we need a fence? I don't like open yards. I like clean separation." I pointed out the sugar maple. "That tree's got a deep root system. And I've got a bed of flowers along that edge. It's not just empty grass. Digging into that space would kill everything." She narrowed her eyes like I'd insulted her personally. "So, you're saying no?" "I'm saying I don't need a fence. I'm not stopping you from putting one on your side, but I'm not paying for something I don't want. Especially not if it damages what I've built." That was the first moment I realized what kind of person she was. She smiled. "But it was cold." "I see. So roots over respect." "Got it." I just stared at her. "Excuse me?" "Forget it." She turned and walked off like I'd spit in her face. 3 weeks later, I went out of town to visit my brother. I was gone just 4 days. Didn't tell anyone, didn't post it online, nothing. When I got back, I still remember that sinking feeling pulling into the driveway. Something felt wrong. The air was too still. My chest got tight before I even stepped out of the car. Then I saw it. That stupid white sign stabbed into the grass between our yards. "Nature pays the price." I ran around back and my stomach dropped. The sugar maple was gone. Not chopped. Not trimmed. Gone. Uprooted, stump and all. A crater left in its place. Half the roots had been ripped up, chunks of dirt and bark strewn everywhere. I stumbled back, tripped over a broken root. Then I noticed the flowers. My wife's favorite flower bed, brown, shriveled, scorched. Every petal dead. Some had black chemical burns on the stems. I could still smell something bitter and sour in the air. Pesticide. Or maybe herbicide. Something toxic. I don't remember grabbing my keys. I just remember standing in front of Diana's door, fists clenched, shaking so hard I could barely hold myself up. She opened it with a wine glass in her hand. "Why would you destroy what I nurtured?" I asked. My voice sounded far away in my own ears. She tilted her head. Because you chose roots over respect. And she closed the door in my face. The police were zero help at first. Said it was a property dispute, civil matter. Told me to call a lawyer. So I did. But I also called an arborist. A guy named Terry who knew the area and had helped the city plant trees along the road last year. He came over 2 days later, walked my yard, and just kept shaking his head. She really pulled it out by the root, he said. That would have taken machinery. Not a chainsaw. She used a bobcat or an excavator. That's serious effort. Then, while he was checking the roots that had been left behind, he hit something solid in the dirt. Mark! You gotta see this. He pulled out a cluster of 5 small metal tags. Rusted, but still readable. Each one had a name, Julia Emma Mark MOM. Dad, he looked confused. What are these? My family, I said, kneeling down. My throat closed up. We buried them under the tree when we planted it. It was something my wife wanted to do. A tradition. No one would have known they were there, he said, unless they dug deep enough. I nodded. My blood ran cold. She didn't just pull the tree out. She dug under it and found those tags. Then tossed them aside. I took the tags and photos of the damage to the police again. This time, with the arborist's written statement, they took it more seriously. Opened a case. Not for the poisoning, that was harder to prove. But trespassing, property damage, and possibly destruction of a memorial or symbolic marker, which apparently does matter when there's clear intent. Meanwhile, I hired a real estate attorney. Diana didn't back down. She started putting up wooden posts on what she claimed was the boundary line. No permits. No survey. Just going ahead like she owned the land. I went online. Found her name in a few legal forums. Turns out, she had been sued twice before for boundary disputes in other states. She'd buy a house, bully the neighbors into upgrades, and once they said no, she'd claim ownership or break things until she got her way. But this time, she made a mistake. The arborist had contacts at city planning. He checked her permit request and found she had submitted a forged property diagram, shifting the boundary line 2 feet onto my land. Enough to claim the tree and flower beds were hers. Forgery. Now we were talking criminal. The cops were back. Charges were filed. My lawyer hit her with a restraining order and a cease and desist. So Diana doubled down. She put a new sign up on her lawn. Victim of a bitter man. And then things got weirder. I started getting anonymous complaints to the city about my yard. Unsightly weeds, unsafe tree roots, trash by the shed. The inspectors came, saw nothing wrong, and left. But it kept happening. One night, I heard a knock around 2 a.m. No one was there. Just the sound of something running through the bushes. Another night, I came home and found dead fish tossed onto my porch. She was unraveling. Or maybe she always was. The cops said to install cameras, so I did. 4 of them. Motion activated, night vision, full coverage. 1 facing the driveway, 1 over the backyard, 1 near the shed, and 1 tucked into the eaves right by the property line. I told my daughter Emma not to come by for a while. She's in college now, but she visits every other weekend. I didn't want her near this mess. The cameras were working within 2 days. And I didn't have to wait long. The second night, around 3:12 a.m., I got an alert. Motion detected. I pulled it up on my phone and watched as Diana, wearing a bathrobe and slippers, crept out with a small jug. She knelt by the edge of my yard, my side, and poured something into the grass. Then she stood up, stared straight into the lens, and flipped it off. The next morning, there was a ring of dead grass right where she'd poured. My stomach turned. I sent the footage straight to my lawyer and the police. That was enough for the judge to approve a full protective order and allow an emergency property line survey. 2 days later, city officials came out and confirmed it. The tree had been entirely on my property. So had the flower beds. She had knowingly crossed onto my land, destroyed everything, and lied on her permit. But here's where it got twisted. The city cancelled her fence project, fined her for building without approval, and then they handed her case over to the DA for criminal charges. Trespassing, destruction of property, false statements on official documents. She snapped. A week later, I came home from work and found my mailbox smashed to pieces. Not just dented. Smashed. Bent in half like someone had taken a bat to it. I reported it, but with no video of that angle, they couldn't prove it was her. That same night, she stood on her front porch in a long coat, smoking a cigarette, just staring at my house. Didn't say a word. Just stared. For over 10 minutes. I didn't go outside. I locked every door and stayed quiet. The next morning, there was another sign. Lies grow roots too. I ripped it out and threw it into the trash. 2 days later, I heard from my lawyer that she'd filed a harassment claim against me. Said I was spying on her, harassing her, damaging her property. She was trying to flip the story. But the cameras? They saved me. I had hours of proof showing she was the one crossing lines, dumping chemicals, vandalizing. We submitted it all. The harassment claim got dropped. And now she was facing 3 charges. Still, the damage had already reached people in the neighborhood. I noticed whispers. People staring a little too long. My other neighbors, the Bennetts, started avoiding eye contact. When I stopped by the local grocery store, the cashier I've known for years asked if I was the guy fighting over the yard. Somehow, she had gotten people on her side. Probably told them I destroyed her property. That I was a bitter old widower lashing out. I kept quiet. I thought things would calm down once the legal stuff was settled. But Diana wasn't done. A week later, my daughter Emma called me, crying. She got a letter at her dorm. No return address. Just a typed page. It said, "Ask your dad what else he buried under that tree. Ask him what kind of man picks a dead wife over a living neighbor. Ask him what he's hiding." I told her it was garbage. Lies. But my hands were shaking when I hung up. I started digging through everything, trying to figure out how she got Emma's school info. I hadn't shared it publicly. But then I remembered, the city property paperwork I filed had included emergency contacts. Diana must have gotten a copy when she forged her permit and accessed my file. That's when I knew this wasn't just a property dispute anymore. This was personal. Then the final twist came. The arborist, Terry, called me again. He'd gone back to the disposal site, where the city had taken the tree remains after cleanup. I don't know what made him do it. Maybe curiosity. Maybe guilt. But he found something wedged into the root ball. A second set of tags. Duplicate metal tags. Same names. Same style. Same rust. But these weren't the ones we buried. The ones I'd found in the soil were new. Which meant someone replaced them. Which meant Diana didn't just dig up the tree. She planted fake tags and left the real ones behind. She wanted me to find them. She wanted me to believe she'd stolen part of my family. Terry looked sick when he told me. "She's messing with your head, man." He gave me the real tags. I sat on the floor and held them in my hands. One of them still had Julia's handwriting faintly scratched into the back. "Forever here." I sat there for a long time. Then I stood up. And I decided this wasn't going to be enough. Not anymore. I didn't just want the law to handle it. I wanted everyone to know who Diana really was. After finding those fake metal tags, something inside me clicked. She hadn't just destroyed my tree. She hadn't just poisoned my flowers or sent my daughter threatening letters. Diana had gone after my grief, on purpose. She wanted me to hurt. She wanted me to feel crazy. And for a while, it worked. But now, I wasn't scared anymore. I was done reacting. I started planning. The next morning, I met with my lawyer and handed him everything. Both sets of tags, the camera footage, the letter to Emma, and proof that Diana had accessed my property file from the city database. We filed a motion to escalate her charges. The trespassing and vandalism were already in the system, but now we had cause for stalking and emotional harassment. I also filed a lawsuit for damages, civil, not just criminal. But that was just the beginning. I hired a private investigator. His name was Jace, and he wasn't cheap. But he was good. Within a week, he gave me a file thick enough to snap a rubber band. Turns out Diana had a long history of these neighbor wars. 3 cities, 2 settlements, and a restraining order that never got enforced because the woman she harassed moved away. Each time, she'd provoke, accuse, manipulate public opinion, and walk away with money or silence. She'd gotten cocky. But this time, she didn't expect someone like me to fight back. I printed out everything and delivered it to each neighbor's mailbox with a short letter. If you've heard rumors about me, that's fine. But before you judge, please read the facts. My neighbor, Diana, has a long history of harassing those around her. She destroyed the tree I planted with my late wife, poisoned my garden, sent letters to my daughter, and tried to change legal property lines to claim land that wasn't hers. The truth matters. I'm not the villain here. And I signed it. Neighbors started coming by one at a time. Quietly. Apologetically. Turns out, she told them I was unstable. That I threatened her. That I refused to put up a fence and let dangerous roots grow wild. But after seeing the court documents and the tags, the tide turned. The Bennetts next door offered to testify. Another neighbor down the street, Sarah, who's lived here 20 years, said Diana tried to pressure her into signing a petition for a neighborhood beautification project. That gave Diana authority to control property borders. That blew back hard. People started pushing back on Diana. No one waved when she drove by. Her open house signs for her side hustle real estate work vanished overnight. Then came the final blow. The city council met for a public hearing. Diana showed up dressed like a victim. Tan coat, scarf, sunglasses, like she was heading to court on a soap opera. But this time, I wasn't alone. 8 neighbors came. Terry the arborist came. The woman from Arizona that Diana harassed before? We got her on video call. She gave a testimony that chilled the room, about how Diana tried to frame her for poisoning a dog, how she sabotaged her garden, how she eventually sold her house just to get away. The council voted unanimously. Diana's fence project was not only revoked, but she was fined $18,000 in violations and property damage. She was ordered to pay for the replacement of the tree, plus legal fees, plus court-ordered community service. But it didn't end there. A few weeks later, her real estate license was suspended pending investigation. Someone, probably one of the neighbors, had sent the full case file to the state licensing board. And then, finally, criminal charges stuck. She was arrested. For trespassing. For property destruction. For filing false documents. And the big one, witness intimidation, after the letter to Emma was entered into evidence. The judge didn't buy her act. Said she showed a pattern of targeted behavior designed to manipulate and emotionally terrorize others. Diana spent 30 days in county jail. Not long. But it made headlines. She lost her job. Her savings. Her reputation. Her Lexus? Repossessed. Her house? Listed. For sale by owner. 2 months later. She left in the middle of the night. Didn't even say goodbye. Just gone. As for me? I planted a new tree. Another sugar maple. Right in the same spot. Took a piece of Julia's handwriting, "Forever Here," and had it engraved on a stone marker at the base. Not buried. Not hidden. Right where everyone could see. Neighbors helped me plant it. Emma came home from school that weekend. We stood together in the yard as I read aloud a letter Julia had written years ago, the one she left for me in case she passed suddenly. The irony? It talked about roots. How love leaves them behind. How even when something dies, the ground remembers. Now I do too. Diana tried to erase what I built. Instead, she made it stronger. She picked the wrong man. And now everyone knows it.